Alright, so with version 5.7 right around the corner, and 5.8 being the last patch before we leave Natlan, it's the perfect time to talk about what banners we can expect in both of these versions. Some characters are basically locked in already thanks to leaks. Others are just heavily speculated based on Hoyoverse's patterns and past rerun timing. Whether you're saving primos, planning pulls, or just curious about who's next, this should give you a clear roadmap of what's likely coming in 5.7 and 5.8. Alright, so let's start by talking about the version 5.7 banners, because if everything lines up the way it's looking right now, we might be getting one of the most stacked patches we've had in a while. Some characters are long overdue, some are just kinda obvious based on patterns, and a couple feel like sleeper picks that might catch people off guard. So let's just break it down one by one. Starting with the character I think everyone's kinda expecting at this point, Skirk. Honestly, it's wild that we've been hearing about Skirk for so long and she still isn't playable. We've seen her name pop up in the lore forever. Child's mentor from the Abyss, super mysterious backstory, all that stuff. And now finally, it looks like 5.7 is gonna be her time. Leaks have been pointing to her being a cryo sword user, and her kit is apparently really unique. She's not your typical freeze character, and she seems to focus more on normal attacks and some special mechanics we haven't seen before. Personally, I've already made up my mind. I'm definitely pulling for her, but only if I can get Escoffier too. From what people are saying, those two might be a really strong combo, and I don't want to miss out on that synergy. Next up is Mavvika, and honestly, this one's less about leaks and more about just looking at Hoyoverse's patterns. Every time an Archon gets their first rerun, it's always 4 patches after their debut. Literally every single time. Venti, Zhongli, Nahida, Raiden, they all followed that same timeline. Mavvika came out in 5.3, so do the math. 4 patches later is 5.7. I'd be genuinely shocked if she doesn't show up in this version. And if we go even deeper, there's another pattern. Archon reruns almost always happen in the second phase of the patch. So if you're planning to pull for her, don't go crazy on phase 1 banners. Chances are she'll be in the second half. Now here's someone who hasn't really been talked about much, Morlani. She came out in version 5.0 with Kinich, and now that Kinich is returning in 5.6, I think that gives Morlani a strong chance of popping up right after in 5.7. Hoyoverse tends to bring characters back in waves, especially ones that were paired during their first banners. It's not a hard rule or anything, but if Kinich is back, then Morlani being close behind would make sense. She hasn't had a rerun yet either, and this would be a pretty reasonable time to slot her in, especially since we're getting close to Natlan's endgame. And then we've got Wanderer. Now this one's a bit more speculative, but also kinda obvious if you think about it. His last banner was in version 4.6, and by the time 5.7 comes around, it'll be a full year since then. That's a long break for a character who's still really popular and very relevant in the lore. Usually, when characters go that long without a rerun, it's either because Hoyoverse is saving them for something huge, or because they're just late in the cycle. But with Wanderer, I feel like this is the right moment. With Skirk and Mavvika already grabbing the spotlight in 5.7, pairing them with a familiar fan favorite like Wanderer feels like a smart move from a business standpoint too. People will pull. So yeah, if I had to put together a prediction for 5.7's banner lineup, here's how I'd see it. Skirk is the new 5-star in phase 1, most likely paired with Morlani as the rerun in that half. Then in phase 2, we'd get Mavvika's first rerun, paired with Wanderer to round it out. That combo makes sense to me. Skirk gets her debut hype, Mavvika follows the Archon pattern, Morlani fits right after Kinich, and Wanderer fills in the final slot after a year-long absence. Obviously, none of this is confirmed yet. Things change all the time, and Hoyoverse loves throwing curveballs last minute. But if you're someone who likes to plan ahead with your primos, or just wants to know what might be coming, this is probably the safest prediction you'll get for now. So yeah, my picks for version 5.7 are Skirk, Mavvika, Morlani, and Wanderer. If all 4 show up, it's gonna be a tough patch to skip. Alright, now let's move on to version 5.8. And this one's looking like a big one. Not because of some major lore twist or new region, but because of what time of year it drops. 5.8 is the summer patch, and if you've been playing Genshin for any amount of time, you probably know what that means. We're most likely getting the return of the Golden Apple Archipelago. Yeah, that's right, the iconic summer event. It's basically a tradition at this point. Hoyoverse brings it back every once in a while as a way to wrap up a region's content before moving on to the next big chapter. We've seen it before with Inazuma, Sumeru, and Fontaine, and with Nodcry right around the corner after 5.8. The timing just lines up perfectly for another Golden Apple event. And whenever we talk about the archipelago, there's one character who always comes to mind: Klee. She's been the heart and soul of this event since the very first time we got those summer islands. Whether she's dragging everyone on an explosive beach trip, or just accidentally causing chaos in the name of fun, Klee's involvement in the Golden Apple Archipelago is kind of legendary at this point. So will Klee get a rerun in version 5.8? Honestly, it feels extremely likely. She hasn't had a banner in quite a while, and every time this event has made a return, she's either been front and center or heavily involved in the side story. Plus, it fits Hoyoverse's pattern of giving certain characters spotlight moments before a major region shift. With 5.8 being the final Natlan patch, bringing Klee back here just makes too much sense. Now, aside from Klee, there's another character who I think has a pretty solid chance of showing up in version 5.8, and that's Emily. If you remember, Emily was released all the way back in version 4.8, and ever since then, nothing. No rerun, no event spotlight. She just kinda disappeared into the background while other Fontaine characters kept rotating in and out of banners. And considering how much time has passed, 5.8 honestly feels like the perfect patch to bring her back. Another character who could definitely pop up in version 5.8 is Chaska. She was first released back in version 5.2, which honestly wasn't that long ago. But here's the thing, Hoyoverse always gives their new characters at least one rerun before wrapping up a region. It's basically part of their cycle. You can look back at characters like Alhaitham, Cyno, and even Farina. They all got one final rerun before their region's content was over. And Chaska isn't just any character. She's one of the most hyped and well-received characters from Natlan. Whether it's her playstyle, personality, or just the insane amount of fan art flying around, she's easily a top-tier favorite among the Natlan cast. So it would be pretty strange if she didn't make another appearance before we leave this region behind. On top of that, 5.8 being the final version of the Natlan patch cycle just strengthens her chances. Hoyoverse loves giving these popular regional characters a little farewell rerun before they shift the spotlight entirely to the next region, which in this case will be Nodcry. If they don't rerun her in 5.8, they risk her getting lost in the shuffle for months while everyone's attention shifts to the new stuff. Now for the last character, honestly. It could go in any direction. At this point in the patch cycle, Hoyoverse could surprise us with someone totally unexpected. But let me throw a name out there that's been oddly missing from the conversation. Cyno. When was the last time we actually saw this guy on a banner? If you guessed version 4.2, you'd be absolutely right. That was his last rerun, and now we're heading into version 5.8, which means it's been over a year. And somehow, no one's talking about it. It's weird because Cyno isn't some forgettable character. He's got a huge role in the Sumeru storyline, he's got a unique playstyle, and his fanbase is still very active. You'd think Hoyoverse would have slotted him in somewhere by now, but they haven't. And that actually makes version 5.8 a pretty solid window for his return. Think about it. He's way overdue. And 5.8 is the last version before the big regional shift to Nodcry. Hoyoverse loves sneaking in forgotten limited characters at the end of a cycle, just to round things out and make sure no one's left behind. Cyno fits that role perfectly. And since there's no major Sumeru event happening here, a rerun banner is the easiest way to bring him back into the spotlight without needing to write him into the story again. So yeah, if you're someone who's been saving for Cyno or just waiting for a good time to pick him up, version 5.8 might finally be it. And that wraps up my predictions for the version 5.7. Version 5.8 banner's roadmap. We talked about summer rerun patterns, possible Fontaine returns, and even some long overdue banners. As always, nothing's confirmed until Hoyoverse drops the livestream, but based on past patterns and timing, these picks feel pretty likely. Let me know what you think in the comments down, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Until next time.